We're going live at Facebook. All right.
10 seconds, yeah.
All right. But on Facebook, I'm live already. Oops. Maybe. Who knows? There we go. And I put up a little thing. Okay. All right. We have a problem today at People's Internet Radio that they're not operating yet. So I'll just start from here at Facebook and begin with a personal story. Oh my gosh. So anyway, this morning I had this gestalt, this aha, and it was so disruptive. It just blew my mind. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. It's called an epiphany, you know, when you get this idea and it just kind of clears the decks. And so it's taken me a couple of hours to recover what I thought I knew because what I thought I knew isn't what I know now. All right, you know how that works. Hi, Jane. And so today I'm going to be talking about the difference between compassion and history and how that is affecting us in the long, long, long run, which is what is happening, that karma is catching up with the activities of governance on this world again. You know, that reset, we have a reset history of civilizations and cities and nationalities being flooded over and mudded over and volcanic ash over and a fire and brimstone that goes back thousands of years, that civilizations that turn out to be too focused on their own preferences and their own fun eventually become corrupted to the point that they are, by some higher authority, taken out. And so for that particular definition, I mean, how come this happens? And that's because under the galactic treaties, compassion is part of the deal. It's all right. It's let go and let God, or live and let live. Live and let live is the official policy of the galaxy. And compassion is the humane quality of understanding that the suffering of others and wanting to do something about it, okay, it's a disposition to be kind and forgiving and to let go, you know, just to live and let live. You let people do what they do as long as they are sort of civil. And so paganism always held sway until its preferences and its fun got to the point it was no longer civil, and people were no longer consenting to the treatment that they were receiving at the hands of the powerful people, which is what we see today in human trafficking and Pizzagate. Okay, what has happened since people began figuring out how to get rich under law, particularly under maritime admiralty statutes? The robber barons figured out how to get rich utilizing technology and corporate hierarchies. Okay, and so the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Mellons and you know the names of the robber barons. They figured out how to get rich under seed money, the law of tenfold return. And I'll give you the link to that book, which I have reprinted for people down below. Okay, how to get rich. And so when the rich people who live very highly civil lives delegate mischief and delegate harm to their workers. They delegate the function of enforcing this or controlling that or propagating harm. They have been left in place for a long time. The rich, the idle rich, have been allowed under the law of compassion to pursue their mischief and their fun and games for a long, long time. Now, the mercy of God is different. The mercy of God shown toward an offender, an enemy, or a person under one's power is compassion when it's deserved, not when it's a cover for doing harm. See what I'm saying? And so what we have now is a system that does harm in the name of governance, a system that does harm in the name of governance, and a system of profiteering on the method called problem, reaction, solution. All right. And here are a list of essential defaulting behaviors that are now opportunities for people to profit. Adultery. Adultery gives opportunity for porn, sex traffic, and divorce. The facilitators and enablers of the divorce, the social workers and the psychologists and the attorneys. Okay. We now have anarchy because legal jurisdictions have been indulging harm, okay, and they allow hoarding and they allow protests to reach the point of violence without anything happening to the perpetrators. Okay. We now have bestiality. We have demonic rape of helpless women and girls, and we have religious rape in the name of divide and conquer jihad. Okay. We have bribery. Now, bribery is big business. In the United States, it's called pay to play. It's called lobbying. Okay. And lobbyists are bribed with cash and with guns to sell and bioweapons and vaccines to sell and sex trafficking. All right. Now we have misery. There's a lot of misery, and there are a lot of industries that deal with the people who are miserable. Okay. We have social services. We have welfare. We have charities. We have hospice. We have, it's all about misery. And then, of course, there are the people who threaten others and who act violently. So we have to have the police. We have to have police because threats and acts of violence are common. Murders are common. We have penury, all right? And we have corporations that exploit the ignorance and misery of their workforce in order to get them to work for less than a minimum wage, less than a living wage. All right. We have perfidy. Now, what's perfidy? Perfidy is lying. So that we have a covert and intel operations contractors who tell one story about security and safety, but whose behavior is not the same as the story they tell. Let's just leave it there. They talk about a secret Space Force, but they don't talk about what the Space Force is actually selling. Okay. We have piracy. Piracy is the legal act to murder and or rob Peter to pay Paul. It's called taxation. Okay, it's more than taxation. It's a form of extortion. We have slavery. We have whole populations, specifically religious ideologies and races that are oppressed and suppressed in order to get the value of their labor very cheap. We have treachery, extortion, and blackmail. There's the whole Jeff Epstein adventure in which young girls from 14 to 18 and young boys were, I think the word is, groomed and entrapped into situations of prostitution so that the dons and the people who were their customers could be blackmailed and controlled by the blackmailing parties. We have usury, and those are fees, services for fees that shouldn't even be services. Law should not be a service. Everybody should know law. Everybody should know what's lawful and unlawful. And so the whole legalist profession is a form of usury. And then there's interest on finance. And these are all just business, okay? And these are all opportunities for people to profit off of these practices and the conflicts and disputes that these practices create and engender. All right? So this is why we are now in the middle of an apocalypse situation. Because doing harm is just business, baby. And the people who are rich do harm at arm's length, so they never personally get involved in it unless they're part of the child sex trafficking and Satanist cannibalism movement network. And it has come to that. The rich people are now eating other people, which has happened before. All right. And so I was in a conversation about God, or with God, like, how can you allow this? And he says, and I get the thought, so that those people who are doing harm will self-destruct, which is what they are all about to do. They are self-destructing because the harm that they have done has been documented in surveillance, okay, and all of the computer surveillance and all the telephone surveillance and all the video surveillance. The harm that the rich people have done is all documented, and they can now be charged. So we live in a time where the people whose preferences and whose fun is defined by what's harmful are being caught up in their own karma. Wow. And so I asked God, and you let all that happen? And he says, well, they wouldn't self-destruct unless I let that happen. They wouldn't self-destruct unless I let it all happen. If I caught them while it was all still secret, their souls would go scot-free when they die. This way, their souls are caught. And I froze. Oh my God. What have I done? You know how we freeze. What have I? Well, wait a minute. Wait now. Now, aren't those people all practicing like attracts like, and they're attracting what's good? And what comes back is yes, they have mastered seed money, the law of tenfold return, and they are prospering financially because of that material karma. That's right. So I'm going, well, don't I want to do that? Don't I want to prosper? Of course you want to prosper by seed money power of 10. But you don't want to adopt fun that is harmful, that will catch you up in its web later. And this is what young people have a hard time to grasp, is that fun now has a price later. Fun now has a price later. And so the realization that I came to, was that when you like attracts like, and you're looking to attract what you want, that's one thing. But when everything feels like it's killing you, all you can do is stop whatever's killing you and get away from what's killing you and escape. Right? You want to join the Church of Stop Shopping in New York City. You want to join the people who are trying to restore the environment. You want to join with people who seek modesty and harmless fun and doing merciful and good deeds for others so that other people aren't suffering. You want to stop what's killing you. And that is perfect metaphysics. Because in metaphysics, we live in a polarized reality in which our thoughts that are positive, okay, we call them left brain dominant. We're on a progressive road from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E, okay. All right, those are the positive thoughts, making progress towards some outcome that we visualize. But when everything appears to be killing us, for crying out loud, the water's polluted, the air's polluted, the food's polluted. They're talking about vaccinating us with chips like an animal, and the vaccines are loaded with thermocerol and the food's loaded with glyphosate, and the water's loaded with fluoride. All you want to do is retire from everything. You just want to get away from everything. And that's what the protests are articulating and acting out. We want to get away from all this, and we don't know how to get away from all this. Getting away from it all. Now, this is why some religious ideologies retire to the mountains, they retire to the desert, they retire to ideologies in which the only fun is the natural life that they allow themselves to live. And there are a lot of groups that do that, you know. In the United States, there are 500 communities that have fled from the mainstream consumerist online television watching, video watching, sports watching public. And there are also 500 tribes, tribal properties in the United States. People just saying, let me out of here. And let me out of here is let me out of the harm that the rich people who are playing the problem, reaction, solution game have created. This is what David Icke talks about, the problem, reaction, solution game, which the rich people have created who mastered the seed money power of 10 before they mastered any concept of practical physical integrity, integrity to the dignity and rights of others to live a physical and human life. Now, let me get into this New Age stuff, okay, the New Age stuff. The New Age says that we're going to raise our awareness of solfeggio frequencies, of manifestations of higher realities, and we're going to visualize an existence for ourselves that's better than third density physical. We're gonna come up with our own frequency and our own visualization and our own society and our own way, and our way is going to be better than just third density physical. That's a wish. That's just a wish. I don't see the protesters having any method for doing anything better than the Sermon on the Mount and holy law, which is to do good and get a good outcome, and to refrain from doing something that's going to give you a bad outcome in long term, and to, if you make a mistake, to get back on the path to doing good. I don't see anything that the protesters advocate or that's superior to the principles in the laws of cause and effect. You got to reap what you sow. Okay, what goes around comes around. In the holy laws of Moses, and I'm just not talking just about the first 10. The first 10 are generalizations. I'm talking about the rest of them, and there's 254. And again, I'll leave you the link to that. All right. And I don't see any liberal organization that has a set of rules based on the Beatitudes of Jesus Christ, Matthew chapters 5 through 25. I don't see any liberal organization that has its ground rules that improves on or does a better job than the rules of Jesus Christ. And there are newer books, okay? There are a lot of newer books, and as you know, I'm into the newer books, all right? And Sumerian cuneiform tablets validate the Genesis story. So does the Book of Enoch, which validates the Colburn Bible and the OSPI, which is the most recent of the books that has Yahweh's name on it. The OSPI has an entirely different vocabulary. It's very difficult to understand, but it has some very fine esoteric concepts in it. When I get excited, my voice gives out. Okay. But in all those books, none of them surpasses the wisdom of the Beatitudes, which was generally the civilization and the social norms of the world that was known as Lyra, that was destroyed because the Lyrans were so innocent and so naive and so idealistic and so wonderful. It never occurred to them that they would have to either confront, address, or deal head-on with evil. They didn't have a clue about evil, and they got eaten, literally eaten, because they didn't know how to deal with security. They didn't have soldiers. They didn't have policemen. And their rules for life, like the Brehon law system of ancient England, Ireland, and Scotland, was only and all verbal and handed down verbally, but it was never written down. And this is why the Roman Empire was able to just trample the Celts and trample the Picts and trample the Saxons, because they had an ironclad legalist system of law. Just like maritime admiralty. Just like maritime admiralty law, which has trampled the monarchies, all of the monarchies of Europe, particularly the English monarchy, trampled laws of the land and common law, because it's written down and there's a priesthood of lawyers, barristers, and attorneys who do the interpretations, and there are jurists and judges in this court and that court and another court, and there's the UCC set and the administrative statutes set, and there are all these different sets of laws, and there's this priesthood, and you pay them fees, and the fees that you pay are 10 times more than the reparations or the redress that you ever get. I had my clock cleaned twice by attorneys. Only when I represented myself pro se was I able to stand in court and win. And that's when I learned about that system. Now, I understand Mr. Greg Hallett has done all of the legal work and generated all the documents and crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's and got some people in Britain to believe, because he has done all the paperwork, that he ought to be the King John III of England. And I unfortunately, I have to differ with that view, because I have never heard Mr. Hallett speak of anything or anybody but himself. He's all about himself. I have never heard him discuss the fall of English common law, or, the monarch of England is supposed to be the head of the Church of England. And I don't think that man has ever seen the inside of a church. He certainly he would have to do several years of catechism in order to be able to sit in the pew. He's not up with why the church says what it does, and where the holy law fits in, and where the Beatitudes fit in, and who is qualified to be a member of the church and who's not. I don't see where he has any particular affinity to the four cultures that comprise the Kingdom of England. There's the English, which include the Saxons, the Welsh, the Scottish, and the Irish. And those four cultures are very different. I don't see Mr. Hallett is even familiar enough with the four cultures to be able to represent all of them or any of them. So I'm essentially not for Mr. Hallett's candidacy, having thrown his hat into the ring for becoming King John III of England. because he has been schooled. His degrees are in psychology and architecture. He has been schooled by the academy, and his contacts are all Illuminati. I don't see where he has enough moral awareness to know right from wrong. So much for Mr. Howard. So where are we in this predicament where the dominant culture is fun-seeking, wealth-seeking, power-seeking, and appearance-seeking? Well, some of us don't like the effects on ourselves, on our families, and on society generally, because what we're looking at is anarchy, chaos, and ideological battles, the divide and conquer strategy of the mainstream press that just never quit. They're about divide and conquer, which is the way I think you can legitimately interpret the Islamic word jihad, is divide and conquer. And that list of enterprises that I read off to you: adultery, anarchy, bestiality, bribery, ideology, misery, penury, perfidy, piracy, slavery, treachery, and usury. Those are all protection rackets that enable and enrich elites who know how to make money at the expense of civil society. Those are protection rackets. And there's an Islamic word for protection racket, and it is lawful in the Quran. It's called jizya, Jizzya, jizya. And the Islamic word taqiyya, which is also allowed under Islam, is, you can call it double dealing or treachery, or say one thing and do something else. So that although Islam operates out of or uses the Bible as its source, it has adopted the ethic of compassion, which is to say, they let evil play out. Okay, so I think some religions are more equal than others. There are highly, highly ethical religious ideologies like Baha'i and Sikhism, which don't allow such behavior. There are Christian fundamentalist, charismatic, and Anabaptist sects which do not allow such behavior. In fact, they have reverted to a stance of eschewing fun, materiality, power, influence, and appearance. Well, their appearances are very uniform. They all dress the same way, they use the same language, and they live by a form of simplicity and integrity and truth-telling that's immediate and ongoing. And so, for people who want to run away, to get the hell out of here and not have to deal with the protection rackets, the place to go, the place to find, are those sects or groups, if you can find one that you can connect with, that simply legislate protection rackets out of their epistemology. They're not having it. They're not having any of the trafficking or any of the glamours or any of the styles or any of the fun, or, they keep things simple. And life itself is the fun that they have. And their best experiences they capture in ongoing journals from decade to decade. And their relationships are their meaningful interactions. And they're not trying to impress anybody else. And so that's what I came to this morning. That not only do we have a great deal to be attracted to in terms of a good life, but we have a great deal to be repulsed from all of the businesses that capitalize on doing harm, that capitalize on, oh, you know what I'm talking about, promiscuity and all of that. That's where History Reset has gone today. And I'm sorry that my friends at People at Internet Radio don't get this today. They'll have to have it as a podcast another time because they're down right now. But anyway, for those of you who are my friends on Facebook, thank you so much for coming by, and I hope you have found today's presentation, today's episode useful. I certainly was surprised to find out that I need to spend as much of my energy not attracting more, but staying away from more. Yeah, let me out of here. I understand that. But we have to have good methods. We don't want with our methods to cause more problems than we're running from. Okay? Let's give that some thoughts. I'll see you guys in a day or two. Thank you for coming by. Bye-bye.